teachers have read it. What is your best read the note to the class story? A positive spin. I was long-term subbing a class. One day I noticed students discreetly passing around a piece of paper while I was teaching. I went to retrieve it and discovered it was a petition signed by each student requesting I remain their teacher for the rest of the year. When I was in HS we had a kid pass a note to another kid, all subtle like. They both sat behind me in the same row. The kid did not even read it. He put it in his pocket but the teacher saw. She made him stand up and told him to pull out the note. He refused. She told him to pull out the note again and he refused. She legit reached into his pocket and said something like, "Let's see what you are hiding from class." She saw the contents and went white. She grabbed both boys and led them to the office immediately. Note, which I later found out, said something along the lines of package left in second trash can of the third empty room or something like that with gun. You won't need it. Don't duck this up. The police found a small amount of heroin and a .22 pistol with no ammo in the said trash can underneath some balled up papers. This turned into a mess where the kids both claimed neither one wrote the note and were not the intended recipient. So the school said they would expel everyone from that line of desks, which our parents pretty much stopped. The police tried searching all of our homes but my parents refused to allow anyone into our home. I was in band at the time and had to take a drug test every 6 weeks. My parents believed me so they refused to allow the police to search the home. The event never got punished because they could never prove anything other than the teacher saw two kids pass a note. About 4 years after graduation I saw on MySpace, yup, that long ago, that one of them died to an OD and the other was arrested for his murder. They never got him for the murder of supplying drugs to a druggie, but did get him on a drug charge. My then fiancée was a high school math teacher. One day she thought she saw a note being passed, but she wasn't sure. So she waited. Then she thought she saw it again. Finally she saw it, walked over, and took it. It was a wedding card, signed by half of the class before she took it. She cried. Edit. Yes. She's now my wife. In high school a girl in class passed a note to another girl, asking if she had a pad or tampon. Teacher completely blew up, started yelling at them, and asked them to read it out loud. They did, and the teacher, who was an older man, immediately calmed down and let it go. I think he was more embarrassed than the girls. Student not a teacher. In maybe the 4th or 5th grade a kid is trying to pass me a note and is caught by the teacher. I wasn't paying attention to where it came from. I only noticed when it was about to be handed to me. She makes him read the note in front of the class. He reads the note and it says, "You wanna be my boyfriend? I like the way your booty moves when you walk." I overreact and say I'm not gay, and the boy says I didn't write that, it came from Tasha. Everyone laughs and she and I are both extremely embarrassed. After class I go to talk to her at the locker and she says, "Yeah, I wrote it but I don't like you like that anymore." Legend as in I'm still single to this day. Edit. My embarrassment has turned to gold. In health class, we were talking about boners and how they fill up with blood. My cousin took a piece of paper and wrote, "Your D is filled with blood," and threw it at some popular kid. The teacher picked it up and you can see him die inside because of the immaturity of 8th graders and how he has to teach them for a career. One time a student had passed a note and I asked it to be read out. Read. Bish to take KKN. Bastards had been playing a game of ducking correspondence chess during my lesson. I let them carry on. Not a teacher, but when I was in high school, I started a note from the back row of the class, which was passed and read by nearly everyone in the class. The teacher grabbed it as it went past him. When there was only 3 people left who hasn't read it, I think he was going to read it out to the class, but he looked at it before he read it. All the note said was that the zip on his pants was down. With all respect to him, he calmly zipped up and continued teaching. Not a teacher, but once I wrote a love letter to a guy when I was 9 years old. When I got caught, a guy took the blame and read it to the whole class. He never said who wrote it. Thank you, Devin. One day in middle school, right around when the Nintendo Wii came out, you could add other friends online for certain compatible online Wii games by sharing a serial code of like 16 numbers or something around there. Sitting in the back of our 7th period science class, 3 of my friends and I started to exchange and write down our Wii serial codes on a small piece of paper. We'd pass it down and share it as we passed it and copy them in our notebooks. Our teacher pauses his lecture as he looks at us. He just gets up from the front of the class, walked to our row where the four of us sat, put his hand out to my buddy for the paper with all of our serial codes on in, takes a moment to glance at it only to see a matrix of random numbers followed by the first letter of our names. He then glances up at us and then to my buddy with the most dumbfounded stare, squints, and asked, "Is this some kind of joke? Cause I'm clueless on this one." My buddy that had to explain ourselves saved us all the embarrassment and said, "I'll explain after class," as he blushed. Luckily our teacher was a really cool dude and was fine with that answer and told us to just put it away. We told him after class and he understood, but also said he was expecting some sort of elaborate code that we were encrypting messages in. Haha. Another non-teacher here. But my 7th grade teacher typically always wore a dress shirt to class and looked very presentable, but this day he had his sleeves rolled up. Now, everyone loved this teacher, but my immediate though was to write a note to my friend sitting beside me that his arms were super hairy, and that note was passed back and forth with us cracking jokes about it. Nothing malicious or overly mean, just that we didn't think he'd have such hairy arms. We eventually got caught, and between classes he took us aside and warned us to not pass notes. And since this was the first time this happened, he would toss it out without reading it and let us go. Well, a couple months go by and he decides to wear short sleeves again, and his arms were noticeably less hairy. I know 12-year-olds don't have the greatest moral compass, but to this day I still feel so bad that my dumbest little note might have made him so self-conscious about something so unimportant. I'm sorry, Emma Fifield, wherever you are now. I taught for a decade in a really rough area. I intercepted a lot of notes and was pretty shameless in public humiliation of my kids. I read a lot of bad stuff out loud. However, one really nice moment that stands out was when the super popular bubbly Latina girl sat next to the stereotype depressed weird white theater band girl. I see them passing notes, which is really uncharacteristic. The band girl seemed off and upset, but I'll let it go because it seemed like there was something going on more. And the Latina girl was a really nice kid. I didn't think she was bullying or anything. I had the girls stay after for a second and asked them what was up. The Latina girl said, "I was worried about her. She looked sadder than usual. So I wanted to make sure she's cool." I asked the other girl if that's what was happening and she said yep, and showed me the notes, which was a really heartfelt convo about boys, relationships and feeling lonely. It was so damned sweet. I asked if they needed more time, and they both said yes. I could get them excused from their next class and they asked if they could chill and talk more. I said sure, because you bet your ass wellness and mental health is a duck ton more important than curriculum. They really had a moment, and it seemed to help them both. This was as 10th graders. I got to see them really develop a nice friendship over the next few years. Go girls, wherever you are now. I hope you're still friends and I'm glad I could help facilitate that. Not a note, but an anonymous question to the class. In health class in freshman year of high school, we had to anonymously write questions about sexuality and the reproductive process, and the teacher would pull out a random card, read the question, and respond with a textbook answer. Said teacher was very religious and very open about her faith in a way that almost seemed patronizing. So I was surprised when she pulled out and read a card that said, "What does the word cunt mean?" She looked at the card, looked at us all calm, and then proceeded to pull up Wikipedia and other web media to inform us of the origin of the word, its connotation, and how it's used differently around the world. I was kind of shocked that she just wanted us to know what it meant, as if to say don't look like a dumb duck if you want to use this word in a sentence. Edit. Sentence blame autocorrect. Not me. THKS. Student, or the teacher. In my college thermodynamics class, the professor said that he didn't care if we got a text message in class. However, he did care if we had our ringers on. So his rule was that if you got a text message and your phone went off loud enough for the whole room to hear it, you had two options. You could either read the text out loud to the whole class, or you could bring in donuts for everyone at the next class. There were about 20 of us. Of course everyone keeps their phones on silent, so it never happens until smack dab in the middle of one of the exams, when the professor's phone gets a text message and rings out loud and clear in the middle of the exam. professor freezes, takes one look at his phone as we all start giggling, and says, "Guess I'm bringing you guys all donuts on Wednesday. They were delicious." I'm 6th grade, not a teacher. The teacher read aloud a note these two kids were passing back and forth, and it was just all the lyrics to Low by Flo Rida. My favorite wholesome note will always be, "Shut up Josh, you did not hook up with Maddie last night. You are gayer than Mr. Dinosaur. We all support and love your gayish ass." I did not read the note aloud. I just put it down and said, "Watch your language." 11th grade physics class. I teach maths, but I was assigned to be present in the class for supervision. In that school, new teachers get to have a more experienced one in the classroom. I was standing at the back of the class when I saw two kids passing around notes and said, "You want to read that out loud or maybe give it to me? I could use something to read to help out the guy with not having to deal with it and continue the lesson." That didn't happen though. The boys start laughing, which makes the class and me laugh as well. Damn the infectious laughter, lol. Instead of giving the paper straight to me, I didn't expect them to read it. The boy opens the note and takes a deep breath. He reads out loud, "Imagine everybody tied to the spring is a slice of ham." Everyone lost it. It was such a random thing to say. I believe the physics teacher still has that note. Edit, check this image to see what I'm talking about. Not really a note, but when I was teaching college classes, I caught two of the girls whispering. So I told them, "If you're going to tell secrets, you need to share with the rest of the class." I taught preschool before this. She looked right at me and said, without the slightest embarrassment, "I was just telling her that I think you have a cute butt." I was teaching a communications class, and we were discussing communications in the workplace, and I looked down at the textbook. After seeing what the next section was, I said, "Okay, moving on to the next section, titled Sexual Harassment." Everyone roared with laughter. A couple weeks later, at a baseball game paid for by the school, she came on to me really hard, with my fiancé right there. Not a teacher, but something one of my teachers told me outside of school. The students were learning about properties of rocks and minerals. The first student wrote, "What's cleavage?" on a note, referencing the mineral property. The second student responded with a human anatomy description. I'm the student in the story, not the teacher. Yeah, I know, but my current students all text or message on their laptops rather than passing physical notes. In 7th grade science class, my friend and I pass notes to each other through the guys sitting between us. Our teacher caught one of the boys with the note but knew it wasn't him because it had enough doodles of hearts flowers on it. She opened it up to read to the class to catch whoever did write it. However, the note was written completely in Tolkien's Elvish alphabet and she couldn't read a word. Most of the class knew that it had to be me and my friend cause we're the only LOTR nerds in the class obsessed enough to teach ourselves the Elvish alphabet. But thankfully no one ratted us out. We were hoping that writing notes in Elvish would keep the boys from reading about my friend's massive crush on one of them. But it ended up also saving us from getting in trouble. I am not a teacher, but I have a story which was kind of the opposite. When I was in college, I was in a large math lecture hall 2 times a week, and me and my friends took to making paper planes and throwing them down from the back of the theater. We did it often and I am sure we thought we were hilarious. Somehow nobody said a word except for the occasional snicker and it went on like that, and off for the semester. Then, on the last day, I remember writing "Happy Christmas Dr. Jones" on a plane and throwing it down. Seeing it land in front of the lecturer, he blew a fuse and started shouting about how this had been going on all semester and he thought it was a disgrace. Then he picked up the plane and read the message, got very embarrassed and meekly said thank you. I still cringe to think of my childish actions, but it did give me that moment of connection with the lecturer before failing his class. Somewhat related, but in 8th grade history, a girl was too talkative and the teacher yelled, "Hey, why don't you try teaching the class?" And the girl said okay and got up, took the textbook and started teaching. She did it perfectly and didn't miss a beat. It was hilarious. My sister-in-law was in 7th grade and was passing notes with a friend. The particular note she was writing one day explicitly called the teacher an asshole. When she was caught with the note, Instead of reading it out loud, she ran to the restroom and flushed it down the toilet. This story is frequently shared at family get-togethers. I was in 8th grade and it was a hot, sunny day in mid-May. I wrote "It's snowing" on a piece of paper and showed it to my friend sitting next to me, who immediately looked out the window. We both laughed because obviously it wasn't snowing. Then he and I laughed when I showed it to another student and they immediately looked out the window. And so on until most of the class is in on the joke and watching as I show the piece of paper to the next unwitting fool. Almost every student knows what's going on. When my teacher sees that I'm showing this piece of paper to everyone and making them laugh, she walks over to my desk, looks down at the piece of paper that says it's snowing and instinctively looks out the window. The entire class bursts out in laughter. I don't know if this is the best, but it's pretty profound. I usually ignored note passing. If a student didn't want to pay attention but wasn't bothering anyone else, I was cool. In the age of cell phones, notes were kind of outdated anyway. So I had this student who could do origami like a boss, and he was always making all kinds of animal figures and cool shapes that I would put on the corkboard behind my desk. This one day he is getting his fold on and is completely focused and not paying attention. Before I know it, class is over and it's on my desk. He stops on the way out of my class and says, "You're gonna wanna read that." I read it and he asking for lunch money cause his mom took off and he was hungry. It hurts being a teacher some days. You all know those sub-teachers who pass around the attendance form instead of doing it themselves? I had one that did that, then saw the girl behind me pass it to me and assumed it was a note. Read it out to the class. Aaron Aardvark, Betty Boop, etc. Obviously fake names. Didn't believe me at first. Came and took it saying I'll read it out then. 8th graders dart talking about reproduction in class. Semen comes up. The note passed said, "Isn't the proper science term cum?" Wonderful. Not a teacher. Someone in my class had a cold and wiped their snot into a scrap piece of paper. As they didn't have a tissue, they then scrunched it up and left it on the side of their desk. Teacher saw this, thought it was a note and grabbed the paper, going through the usual fanfare of the importance not passing notes around. The look on her face when she opened it was priceless. Helped my buddy and professor out one time a few years ago. The professor had warned the students to not leave their ringers on in class, or else he would throw the phone out of the window. Everyone assumes he is not serious. My friend was getting rid of his cell phone and offered it up as a sacrifice. I called my friend at a scheduled time. My friend said hello and then the professor walked over, grabbed the phone and threw it out of the room. I was told the whole class was stunned. Teacher here. It's never a good idea to do this. Nothing written on that paper is a good outcome for anyone if read aloud. And by forcing them to read it you send the message that you're willing to just stop having class if they make enough noise. You will very rarely have someone very old do this. Or potentially a pissy 30 something with something to prove. By and large this is a movie trope that is not done. In 7th grade science I wrote a note to a friend with an apple depicted as a ninja. It read, "I hope Mrs. Gray gets killed by a green ninja apple." Read it out loud. Class laughed. Science teacher went to the math teaching, Ms. Gray, and they were scolding me about how wrong it was, and the math teacher threatened to press charges over the posted note. She was a rich who said on her first day of school, "I can't wait to retire." Not a teacher. But my best story was a kid in my class who killed himself because a teacher made him do this. We were in high school, maybe a bit too old for passing notes, but the note was apologizing to a girl for not satisfying her in bed. Obviously this was deeply embarrassing. He should have just took the suspension and refused to read the note, and he killed himself that very night. Drug overdose. Oxycontin. The school did a big memorial service and explained how he was deeply troubled with issues at home. And I'm sure there was more than one factor, but it sure as hell didn't help for a teacher to shame him in front of everybody. Was the student, not the teacher. In 3rd grade, 1996, my class was performing a play. I had a total of 2 lines of dialogue, but I really wanted to get it right, so I copied my lines from the textbook, folded it up, and stuck it in my pocket. The teacher only saw the last bit of this but assumed I was sticking a note in my pocket and told me to get up in front of the class and read it out loud. I recited my lines verbatim and handed the note to the teacher. Without reading it, she assumed I was being a smartass and sent me to the principal's office, where I received recess detention and a call to my parents. Not sure why I never asked anyone to read the note, but I didn't. The next day when I arrived at school, my teacher pulled me aside and told me that she had read the note, realized what it was and apologized profusely. She took me down to the office to call my parents and let me go out for 2 periods of recess. Props MRS. W for the life lesson about humility and doing the right thing. I still remember. Not me, but a friend of mine who taught 7th grade. He found a note and was about to read it to the class, but when he opened it, the note read, "I want you to crack an egg in my ass and duck me so hard it scrambles." He immediately put it in his locked desk drawer without reading it out loud, and it's now laminated and hung up on his fridge at home. Had a student give a presentation on a historical math figure, asked if he could use his phone for notes, literally read the Wikipedia page to the class. As soon as I realized it, I displayed it on the projector behind him. Me and a friend in high school used to pass notes back and forth, writing song lyrics as we went. This day we were doing the lyrics to David Bowie's Labyrinth Magic song and I had to stand up and read it. The teacher got even angrier because she didn't believe that was on the note, so she stormed up and snatched the note from my hand. When she realized the note indeed did remind her of the babe, she cracked up laughing before asking us to stop. I was actually the note passers in question that got caught. In 8th grade, a buddy and I were passing notes talking about the events happening that weekend. Local Smash and Halo tournament. The teacher caught me passing back, but just took the paper and didn't force me to read it. Lo and behold, the next morning I get called down to the office. The teacher, who was a fairly old civics teacher, vice principal, school nurse, and my woodshop teacher, who is 27 at the oldest, were all in the office around me. The VP starts off asking me if I'm okay and if I need help. Everyone looks super worried except the woodshop teacher, who is clearly holding in laughter. Unbeknownst to me, ends up my G-Dumbus used a sheet of paper that has song lyrics to a Slipknot song on the other side. I used to write song lyrics from my favorite songs while I was bored in class. Ends up, most Slipknot songs, when taken out of context by people who are too old to know the band, sound really troubling. Especially that relatively new song at the time, Wait and Bleed. I tried explaining it to them that I'm fine and it's legit just a song by a band. I proceeded to show them all the song lyrics by various bands in my notebooks. Nope. They still didn't believe me. Then my woodshop teacher finally burst out laughing. It ends up he has been trying to explain the same thing as I said to them for the past half hour. Eventually we both convinced them all was fine, but damn. Lol. One perk out of all this, found out that day my favorite teacher was a fan of metal. Lol. Back in my substitute teaching days, just out of college, I was subbing for junior high science teacher. I thought the day had been going relatively smoothly, but during a break, I noticed a note on the floor. I picked it up and read it, and it said, "Mr. Palquito is a asshole. Keep quiet. Keep your head down. Stay calm." To this day, I appreciate the implication that, to that set of kids, I was like the junior high version of the warden from Shawshank Redemption.